A good person will lament the consequences of their actions. A bad person will lament that their actions have consequences. Hey there, kiddos, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. And in today's video, I'd like to sit back in my squeaky chair, relax, and have a little conversation with you kiddos about hypotheticals. You see, one of the users over on Discord asked what would happen if Wizards of the Coast would just stop making new standard sets for Magic and just released everything with a focus on Commander. How would that change the game? And, you know, what would the new product lineup look like? And I figured that was a pretty interesting question. At least one, worth giving a quick chat about. I do like hypotheticals after all, and I think it could, in theory, make for an interesting video. So, in today's video, I'm going to go over that. Exploring what would happen if Chris Cox decided tomorrow that Magic the Gathering didn't need standard anymore, and they really were going to focus all in on that wonderful format Commander. Well, if tomorrow Wizards of the Coast announced that they were going to be sunsetting the standard product line, I think there would be 4 pretty immediate changes to Magic the Gathering, ranging from player-based responses to the kind of products we'd see in the future, in like 2027 going forward. So maybe not immediate changes, but pretty fast on a TCG scale. So the first one obviously would be the most immediate and most apparent. It would be the immediate death of formats like Standard and Pioneer. These formats are, of course, held up exclusively by Standard booster box sets. So with no more Standard products coming in the pipeline, Standard as a format would die. This is just natural cause and effect. And as a direct result of Standard dying, Pioneer, which is basically just Extended 2.0, Pioneer would also go the way of the Dodo. But beyond those 2 formats dying, I don't think that many other formats would initially be affected. And how long Standard holds out while waiting for the Execution Blade to drop, so to speak, is kind of up in the air. Some people would play it for a bit longer than others, but at the end of the day, Standard with no new products is effectively a stagnant and super dead format. So most people would, I believe, move on to other things, especially since Magic already has so many other options. I don't believe too many other formats would be affected in terms of player-based reaction. Modern, for instance, already has it's already been hit quite hard by other things that Wizards has done, so it, I think, would stay largely the same as it is now. Same with Paupers, same with Vintage and Legacy, if people remember that those exist. The biggest change, of course, being to Commander. Commander being the focus of the game going forward would definitely get some eyebrows raised and would definitely get a bit more attention on the format, which I know sounds difficult because of how popular Commander as a format already is. But needless to say, Wizards of the Coast telling the community that they are only going to be focusing on Commander going forward would definitely get some people, I think, who've been holding out on it for a while to at least go, all right, I guess this is Magic now. So, the next change that I think would happen over 1 to 2 year period of time after the change goes into effect was to be that we'd still get the same amount of products each year. That wouldn't change. Wizards of the Coast, all other things being equal, Wizards of the Coast really likes that money. It makes them look nice for Hasbro, makes Hasbro look nice for the shareholders, and makes their world go round. So obviously the same number of booster box sets would still be released with play boosters, Commander decks, collector booster boxes, and whatever weird ancillary products they could throw in. And don't worry, we'll get to that in just a second. The number of sets would stay the same. It's just that instead of a theoretically lower power level, focusing entirely on standard, these sets would have a higher price point because they're commander products. They can be a bit more expensive for those commander players, right? Wizards, you sure do love raising price tags on otherwise normal boxes. So I believe box prices would go up. I believe that the number of boxes released a year would stay the same or potentially even go up like we're seeing next year. But that just the focus of the sets would be less cohesive and less intentionally designed to go with one another. Because here's an interesting anecdote, I believe. An anecdote that only I believe, I should say. If Wizards is not forced to consider standard as a format, there's a lot less focus needed on play testing and making sure that sets are cohesive with one another in a limited environment, a relatively limited environment, only a few sets available. So we could see sets releasing one after the other that not only are completely disparate from one another in terms of focus and theme, but also in terms of power level. Like one set can come out aimed almost entirely at lower power commander groups, and another one can come out that's basically CEDH on crack of the set, with all kinds of crazy new cards in there that basically replace every staple currently in the format. And that's the thing I believe would be the biggest impact of these new sets, is that well, the game is focusing on commander now, so going forward there's going to need to be reasons for commander players to buy the products. And Wizards of the Coast has historically shown us that the best thing they can do to get you buying their new commander products is newer and shinier and more powerful staples that are just better than everything else done so far. We saw it with Jeweled Lotus, we saw it with the One Ring, we're going to see it more and more if this were to occur. Yeah, my throat's so clogged today. The next thing that would change, I believe, is that ancillary products would become stranger and more experimental. And I don't necessarily believe that this is a bad thing. Ancillary products have always been, in my opinion, one of the weirder and more potentially enjoyable aspects of Magic the Gathering as a game. I'm a huge fan, and I've said this before, I'm a huge fan of the conspiracy sets, just because of the fun way they improve draft, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of those weird side products, Arch Enemy, From the Vault. Again, conspiracy, I'm a huge fan of that. So weird ancillary products, one-off products. In my opinion, since they're all being tailored towards Commander now, they could all have... There's so many more things you could do with that. Yeah, new kinds of Arch Enemy could pop up. Or other versions of player versus enemy decks. Imagine an entire Commander deck released that Wizards designs to be played by itself. You get a pot of 4 guys together and play against an enemy deck. It's like Arch Enemy, but it has some kind of new gimmick. I wouldn't know what it is. But yeah, the ancillary products released after the game has a complete shift to Commander could be very new, very radically different. You could see a version of Conspiracy where the goal is to build your Commander deck throughout the game itself. Every few rounds you draft a new pack and build a deck based on that. Kind of fun stuff, I think. But the biggest change that I think would happen, and the one that would be the hardest to quantify because of what the change itself would be, is that I do believe that if Wizards of the Coast were to stop focusing on Standard so much and would focus their undivided attention on Commander, I do believe Commander as a format would get worse. And why do I think that? Well, it's because Commander as a format, in my opinion, just so we're all clear here, in my opinion, Commander as a format, EDH as a format, is best when it is kind of reliant on the scraps, so to speak, and isn't being directly targeted and affected by Wizards of the Coast in a way that helps them line out their bottom line their pockets, I should say. You see, Commander has thrived without Wizards of the Coast attention, and when Wizards of the Coast does give attention to the format, we see some pretty interesting and not so great additions to it. I'm not just referring to new powerful cards being printed in it. I'm also referring, to things like the new bracket system they've designed, which didn't exactly have the best response from the community. I think for what should be pretty obvious reasons. The idea of a fan and community format being upheld exclusively by just passionate people who want to continue playing with their cards, that's a good thing, I think. And Commander, once upon a time, was a format where you could take any card that you just kind of liked, but it didn't have a home in Standard, or Modern, or Vintage, or anywhere else. It didn't have a home, but you could put it into a Commander deck. Those days are by and large gone just because of how much optimization Wizards has tried forcing into the format as a whole over the years. More and more Commander set releases, more and more Commander box releases, decks, etc. has definitely changed the format for, in what my opinion, is for the worse. And I believe that the best thing Wizards could do for Commander is to stop designing for it entirely and just let the players naturally pick what they want from the sets that come out to add to it. But obviously in this scenario, we would be seeing the extreme ends of Wizards of the Coast's meddling take full effect. So every new set would have newer and shinier ways to play certain tribes, certain deck archetypes. You would see staples being replaced basically every other year. How long would... What's a good example? So the dual lands in EDH are obviously the best lands you could possibly play. They have no downsides whatsoever and are fetchable. In a world where Wizards of the Coast needs to be constantly getting Commander players to buy new product, how long would the OG dual lands remain the best dual lands? How long would Mox Diamond be one of the best turn 1 artifact plays? How long would the ban list remain the same because new stuff just keeps coming onto it, overpowering the stuff that was even on the ban list before it, right? Wizards, any company that's trying to really force people to buy their new products is inevitably going to make changes to what people enjoyed about that product line in the first place, right? This isn't exactly a Wizards of the Coast problem, but I do believe that if they were focusing solely on Commander going forward, that the format itself would become much worse than it already is by some perceptions. And that wouldn't necessarily be long-term healthy for the game. So that's my what if. My what if is there would definitely be a surge of Commander at first. And then whatever is born after Wizards of the Coast gives it its undivided attention would not be as good or as enjoyable as what existed before. That's just my opinion. That's the what if for today. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm wrong? Let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate your time. Have a great day.